So, welcome all to day one of this new book called Change Your Questions, Change Your Life by Marilee Adams. So, there are a lot of praises for this book, and in total, I think if I'm not mistaken, there are 23 praises. So, in order to go ahead every day, we will take one praise and then go with the book. So, the first praise, the ideas in Change Your Questions, Change Your Life have had a profound impact on me and my business. Few books offer such potential to change everything in your work and life. Read this book and learn how to use the power of question thinking to revolutionize your thinking, solutions, and results. Larina Case, Site MBA, author of The Confident Leader and co-author of the New York Best Time Seller, The Confident Speaker. So change your questions, change your life. So the foreword is by Marshall Goldsmith. If anybody does not know, Marshall Goldsmith is a very good actor. He's a very good author, and his book, it will not take you where it got you here, is very, very popular. How can reading Change Your Questions, Change Your Life help you and the people who are important to you have better lives? This is the key question I urge you to keep in mind as you read this valuable book. The great ideas presented here in a system of tools Marilee Adams called questions thinking provide a solid new way of thinking that can make a positive difference in all our lives. There are many ideas in this book that helped me. You are sure to find some that will help you too. Change Your Questions, Change Your Life provides methods, skills, and tools for easily implementing question thinking both at home and at work. To begin with, Marilee shows how we can become more efficient and effective by focusing on learning rather than judging. As a Buddhist, I know this is key to having a happier, more productive life. So, when we are talking about the key area where we will be working with this book is we will be working on a mindset. What is the mindset that we require to change the circumstances, the situations, the experiences of our life? And we need to be focused very clearly on learning rather than judging. So we'll get into detailed discussions and analysis on what do we mean by focusing on learning rather than judging. But yeah, that's one of the keys to everything that is there in this book. Everything starts from a thought. माइंड को एक थॉट आता है, वो थॉट एक फीलिंग, एक इमोशन में ट्रांसफॉर्म होता है, and then there is an action which is probably a physical action, or there is a change in your energy body or your physical body, and then whatever is the consequences based on the choices of the action taken by you particulates in your life as a reality that you perceive. But have you ever wondered, because as a human being we have 60 to 66,000 thoughts a day, and apparently 2/3 of our thoughts are negative, और हर चीज उस थॉट से शुरू हो रही है. And every thought, when it's there in our mind, there is always a question. Is this the right thought for me? Or should I think on these lines? That is the start of all our experiences here on this school of earth, where your thought takes you wherever you want to travel, where your thought guides you to whatever you want to experience. And that question with that initial thought is where we start our working as to how to make that question associated with that first thought, a thought of learning or a thought of judging or passing or making a label out of it. Judging is something to do with judgment or labeling part of the mind. Merrily shows us the power of questions to direct our thinking and therefore our actions and results. This means that we can intentionally affect the future by designing the most powerful questions for getting us there. That's what great coaching is all about. It's also what great leaders do. They provide us with visions of new futures. Merrily offers question tools for both coaches and leaders to optimize and fulfill their missions. It is no surprise that Change Your Questions, Change Your Life became a bestseller. It made so much of a real difference in people's lives that they shared the book with their teams and their companies and also with their families and friends. The story in the introduction says it all. A reader wrote merrily that he used the methods in the book so successfully that his company got a mention in the Inc. magazine. That's also why so many coaches use the question thinking methods and also give the book to their coaches. In my mission as an executive coach, I help successful leaders get better, measurable results. This includes teaching a process called Feed Forward. Leaders learn to ask for ideas to move the future. They refine their ability to listen without judgment and to say thank you for suggestions. Merrily would call this learner listening. This is invaluable for all coaches, leaders, and managers. Race car drivers are taught to focus on the road, not the wall. As you read this book, focus on the road that represents your highest potential by asking questions that lead to a better future, such as what are the greatest positive possibilities I can imagine. The second edition delivers even more than the first. The new chapters and tools make the material even more accessible and practical. Change Your Question, Change Your Life has great wisdom for us all. Take it very seriously, roll up your sleeves, and get to work. The best way to get the most out of this book is to practice everything in it. Life is good. Marshall Goldsmith, author, What Got You Here Won't Get You There, winner of the Harold Longman Awards as the best business book of 2007, named by the American Management Association as one of the 50 great thinkers and leaders influencing the field of management over the past 80 years. So before we start and get into the actual book, it's very important to spend some time on what Marshall Goldsmith meant in the end when he talks about being serious. And he also mentions is to practice with the book. In life in general, knowledge बहुत अच्छी लगती है. I mean, first time कोई कुछ समझाए ना, कोई नई चीज सुनने को मिले, बड़ा मजा आता है. I mean, I am of that notion. I'm very fascinated when it comes to new knowledge and everything. But is knowledge the only thing that is required? I have a question for the group. Is knowledge the only thing that is required? Who would like to answer?
I think knowledge is very important to create the awareness, uh, to for you to understand how this world, this beautiful world created by the Almighty, is working. Who are you? Who are you in this whole massive universe? So it gives you perspective. I think knowledge is very important to, because it's only through that knowledge is when you're able to see what your true goals and desires are. Otherwise, if you don't have that knowledge, which we all are still striving to get, uh, we might be leading a life with not the right desires. So it's very important to have those before the start, or as soon as possible, really. So I think that's knowledge for me.
Great. Anybody else? Well, good. Yeah, nice perspective, Saurabh. But honestly speaking, from where I see things, uh, knowledge is important. But just knowledge is like learning how to swim without even touching the water. Is to learn how to fight or how to run without stepping on the field.
Yeah, 100% agree.
So, the catch to all knowledge, because सुनने में ना बहुत अच्छा लगता है कभी कभार बड़े अच्छे स्पीकर्स आते हैं and you are like thrilled यार बड़ा मजा आया बड़ा मजा आया. But the catch always is if this knowledge is coming to me right now, that means there is a purpose for this knowledge to come into my awareness. And that purpose is fulfilled when we start using that knowledge in our day-to-day lives, in our day-to-day interactions, in our day-to-day work, in our day-to-day life, in our day-to-day routine, basically. And then with our own individual effort, co-created with the grace of God, get to the wisdom for which this knowledge came to us in the first place. So knowledge always comes at the right time. All we need to do is be open to working with that knowledge, co-create an experience with the Almighty in terms of our day-to-day routines in order to get the wisdom for which the knowledge came to us. So knowledge, practice is equal to wisdom. And beach mein, always and always there is the grace of God, Almighty, energy, universe, whatever name you want to call it. Absolutely uh, personal choice. But whatever knowledge is coming to me is coming with a purpose. All I have to do is believe in that grace of the Almighty and practice it in my day-to-day routine so that I, the individual, can get towards the wisdom for which the knowledge actually came. So that's a very powerful intention for this book, which is, beautifully prescribed by such a great author like Marshall Goldsmith. So that's something which we need to take from here, apply it in this book, and very important, apply it in our life wherever we get that knowledge, acknowledge that knowledge, because that knowledge has a purpose to impart the wisdom. But the gap between knowledge and wisdom is your action with God's grace and a lot of practice. So that's the journey from knowledge to wisdom. Introduction. One summer afternoon, shortly after the first edition of this book was published, I answered my office phone to hear a man's blooming voice announce, "You don't know me, but I am Ben." He laughed, and I laughed along with him because I knew exactly what he was referring to. Ben is the main character in Change Your Questions, Change Your Life. And this caller identified with him so much that he thought I could also help him and his organization. By now, Ben, the character, is almost legendary for many of my readers. Proud of being the answer man. He believes he must always have the answers and must always be right. In the story, a business fable through which readers experience the practical power of question thinking. Ben is floundering in his new leadership position, but that isn't all. He is also having trouble at home. His relationship with Grace, his wife of less than a year, is growing increasingly tense. When we first met him, Ben is one unhappy guy. Since that first telephone call from a Ben, I have received many similar messages from both men and women. One reader, David, wrote me that, like Ben, he'd been in trouble at work, especially with his team. After reading Change Your Questions, he changed his own questions and in the process changed his leadership style. He was ultimately so successful that the results were included in an article in Inc. magazine. You'll find the reference for that article in the notes at the end of the book. Change Your Questions has struck a chord with so many readers that it has become a bestseller. The first inkling I had of its impact occurred when the senior manager at a large pharmaceutical company called me with an invitation to discuss group featuring my book. She had sent copies to the 50 members of her globally dispersed team with just one instruction: come to the book discussion with one example of something you've done differently as a result of reading this book. On the day of the meeting, I was ushered into a conference room with about 30 people seated around a large table. Others joined us by speakerphone. I listened in amazement as person after person described the results they had achieved. One man told us he was leading his team more successfully. A woman shared that her relationship with the direct report had improved significantly, and a plant manager in Brazil explained how reading the book helped him recognize and correct a problem in his plant. Since then, I have given results focused question thinking presentations at some of the world's largest corporations, at major federal agencies, at nonprofits, and in communities. Largely through word of mouth, Change Your Questions has become required reading in leadership development programs, executive coach training, and college courses. It is used by teams in companies and government agencies, by healthcare professionals, in major hospitals, and by human race professionals as well as those in sales. It's used in church sponsored marriage enrichment workshops, in decision making programs, in prisons, and as part of creativity and innovation initiatives in organizations large and small. Community leaders have used it to find constructive responses to tough challenges in inner circles. Coaches and mediators give it to their clients. People share it with their parents, their adult and teenage children, and their friends and colleagues. So it's, when we're reading this chapter, it seems that this is a business book meant for corporations, meant for those, who are in the field, sales department, organizational departments. Uh, that is one part of this book. But there is also another part of the book where it actually focuses on your personal life. It focuses on your personal relationships with your partner, spouse, with your kids, with your parents, with your siblings, with your friends, with your acquaintances, with your social circles, and most importantly, with your relationship with yourself. So once we get on with the book, the way this book can help you get in touch with that true nature of who you truly are is phenomenally amazing. So it's not just a business book, it's something which, if you incorporate in your day-to-day lives, is, I would say, a best choice made by us. Because as a result, life में जो भी हो रहा है, everything is part as a consequence of a choice we've made. And all choices have the appropriate consequences. And when we feel stuck with those consequences as a result of what is happening in our lives, all we need to do is just change that choice, and accordingly, the consequence will change. And in this book, we will learn how to make that choice, that change in the choice, by just changing the underlying question of that thought, which is there, which is the start of everything that is happening with us in our personal life, in our work life, and most importantly, with the relation which we have with ourselves. Because this is the person who's going to be there with you 24/7 non-stop जब तक सांस चलेगी. One might wonder why Change Your Questions has gained such a widespread traction. Question thinking, the heart of the book, takes on an age-old issue: our ability to be in charge of our thinking moment by moment by moment. Question thinking QT provides skills for observing and assessing our present thinking, including the questions we are asking ourselves, and then guides us in designing new questions for getting better results. In other words, QT helps us think productively rather than reactively, and to choose wisely rather than simply react. Building such a reliable capacity for thinking is central to the skills required for intentional and sustainable change. Whether that change is sought in our professional or personal lives. Without these skills, our goals for change may be only wistful slogans that will never come to fruition. Question thinking began with an important moment of discovery in my own life. I was a determined young graduate student working away on my PhD dissertation. Not only did I endure a ruthless inner critic, but criticism from others often left me in tears. One fateful day, expecting high praise from my advisor for some work I felt great about, I instead heard from him, "Merrily, this is just not acceptable." At that moment, something new happened. Instead of tearfully wondering what was wrong with me, I took a deep breath and became calm and curious, simply asked him, "Okay, how do I fix it?" That simple shift took me from feeling powerless to being confident enough to take constructive action. Afterward, I wondered, could this seeming miracle be turned into a reliable method for myself and others? And so I began. So imagine yourself in a situation where you worked so hard in terms of delivering the best you could. And deep down, when you make that effort, no matter who the person is, everybody craves for acknowledgement. Everybody craves for being appreciated. Deep down, हर एक के अंदर होता है, दिखाए ना दिखाए separate. So imagine आपने बहुत काम किया है, and deep down you feel that you have done justice to the work that was assigned to you. It could be in your day-to-day life, or it could be something to do with your work, anything. But as a result of whatever you've done, the other person has outrightly rejected all your efforts with a simple statement that this is not acceptable. This is not what I need. This is not what the way I want you to be. Majority of the times, you are so heartbroken at that time because of what you have put in as an individual. You are expecting some appreciation, some acknowledgement, which is natural. But दूसरी साइड से क्या आता है? कंडेमनेशन. ये तो ठीक ही नहीं है, तेरे को करना ही नहीं आता. That is where now you have to be in control, because this point is now going to decide, are you going to react to this situation, or are you going to absorb and respond to the situation? Because that's the choice you have to make now. Am I going to react? Choice number one. Or am I going to absorb and respond with a question, how can I fix it? And that is a very powerful response, by the way, because majority of everybody, because when we do a lot of efforts, when we are expecting a lot of praises, appreciation, acknowledgement, and suddenly the other person comes and says, "Kya kiya ye? Kara nahi aata?" So majority of the times, you either get angry, you get heartbroken, you get so disheartened that you might just leave. You might shout, yell back at the person, pick up a fight, whatever. That's the usual responses. But what the author did and what is now going to be available to you in this book is, in this moment, when your expectations of appreciation and praise have been shattered fully and completely, what is the one question that I need to ask in order to make that choice to respond to the situation rather than react to the situation? And the author rightfully picks up the response, okay, I take full responsibility. What can be done to fix it? It could have been, you don't know, you never appreciate me, आपको पता ही नहीं है मैंने इतनी मेहनत से काम किया है, आप करो कभी इतनी मेहनत से, आपको तब पता लगेगा. That is a response, that is a reaction which generally happens with a lot of people, including us. We are no different, everybody is the same. But to be in that position of empowerment in such a situation, by asking that question, so that the choice comes from the premise of responding to the situation rather than react to the situation.